Chapter 2. Mr. Batton went to the nearest clothes store. "Good morning. I want to buy some clothes for my son," he said nervously to the clerk. "How old is your child, sir?" "About 6 hours old," answered Mr. Batton, without thinking. "Baby's clothes are at the back of the store." I'm not sure that's what I want." "He's an unusually large child." "Very large. They have the largest baby sizes." "Where are the boys' clothes?" inquired Mr. Batton, shifting his ground desperately. He thought that the clerk must have sensed his shameful secret. "Boys' clothes are right here." "Well," he hesitated. The notion of dressing his son in men's clothes was repugnant to him. Maybe a very large boy's suit. Then he could cut his son's beard off and color his hair brown. He looked around. But he couldn't see anything to fit the newborn Batton. "How old did you say your son was?" asked the sales clerk curiously. He's 16. "Oh, I beg your pardon. I thought you said 6 hours. You'll find something for the young man in the next room." Mr. Batton turned away. Then he stopped, and pointed his finger toward a dressed dummy in the window display. "There," he said. "I'll take that suit." The sales clerk looked at the suit in surprise. "But that's not for everyday wear, it's a party dress." "It's what I want." The astonished clerk obeyed. Back at the hospital, Mr. Batton almost threw the package at his son. "Here are your clothes," he said. "Put them on." The old man untied the package and looked at the suit. "I don't want to look stupid," he said. "I'm the one who looks stupid," said Mr. Batton angrily. "Put them on or I'll spank you." That sounded strange. But wasn't it what fathers said to their sons? "All right, father. You've lived longer than me. You know best. I'll do what you want. And hurry." "I'm hurrying, father." When his son was dressed, Mr. Batton looked at him unhappily. It wasn't good. The pants were pink, the socks were green, and the white shirt had a belt around the waist. His son's long grey beard hung down the front of his shirt. "Wait," he said. "Mr. Batton seized a hospital shears and cut off most of the beard. But even this didn't help much. The watery eyes, the yellow teeth. You could see that this was an old man. But Mr. Batton held out his hand. "Come along," he said sternly. His son took his hand and they walked together from the hospital. "What are you going to call me, father?" "Baby, until you think of something better," the old man asked. "I don't know," said Mr. Batton coldly. Mr. and Mrs. Roger Batton called their baby Benjamin. They cut his hair short and colored it brown. They shaved his beard every day and they ordered very large baby suits for him. They wanted Benjamin to look like a baby, and they tried very hard for it. At first, on Mr. Batton's orders, his son was only given warm milk. But this didn't please Benjamin, so Mr. Batton finally changed his mind. After that, Benjamin was given bread and butter and other soft food. Mr. Batton brought home toys for babies, and Benjamin tried to play with them. But the toy trains and animals didn't interest him. Soon, he found other and more soothing amusements when he was left alone. One day when Mr. Batton came home, his cigarettes weren't in their usual place. He looked everywhere. Later that evening, he walked into his son's bedroom. The room was full of smoke and Benjamin was trying to hide a cigarette. Mr. Batton was angry. He knew that he should punish his son. But he didn't do that. "You won't grow," he told Benjamin. "Smoking is very bad for children." He continued to bring home toys, but, despite all his father's efforts, Benjamin refused to be interested. When he was alone in the house, he often took books from the shelves downstairs. Then he read them all afternoon in his room. Soon, everybody in Baltimore knew about Benjamin. Most people didn't know what to say to Mr. and Mrs. Batton. "He looks very much like his grandfather," some kind people said. This was of course true, but Mr. and Mrs. Rocer Batton were not pleased, and Benjamin's grandfather was furious. Small children were brought to the house to play with Benjamin. He tried to be interested in their games, but it wasn't easy for him. Their games were very simple baby games, and Benjamin wanted more difficult activities. One day, he broke a kitchen window with a stone from a slingshot when he was playing with some of the children. It was an accident, but the boys were all afraid. But Mr. Batton wasn't angry. This secretly delighted him. "Accidents happen when small boys are playing," he told his wife. "You see, Benjamin is only a child." Thereafter Benjamin contrived to break something every day, to please his parents. When his grandfather's initial antagonism wore off, Benjamin and his grandfather became very good friends. They sat together for hours, talking about news from the town or stories in the newspapers. Benjamin started to feel more at ease with his grandfather than with his parents. Mr. and Mrs. Rocer Batton always seemed a little afraid of their son. They told him what to do. But they frequently addressed him as Mr. Benjamin was as surprised as everyone by the age of his mind and body. He didn't understand it. He read up on it in the medical journal, but found that no such case had been previously recorded. At his father's urging he tried to play with other boys. But he couldn't run with them and football was too hard for him. His body was too old and he feared that in case of a fracture his ancient bones would refuse to knit. The other boys couldn't understand Benjamin. They didn't know his age. They thought he was an old man. It seemed strange to them to play games with him. When he was 5, Benjamin was sent to kindergarten. There he learned to stick pieces of colored paper together. He made things from old boxes and he drew pictures. But he drowsed in the middle of these tasks, a habit which both irritated and frightened his young teacher. The teacher wrote to his parents, and soon Benjamin was taken out of school. The Battons explained this to their friends. "We think he's still too young for school," they said. By the time he was 12 years old, his parents were used to him. Most of the time, they didn't think he was different from other children. Then, one day, Benjamin looked in the mirror and discovered something very surprising. "My hair," he thought to himself, or, rather, scarcely dared to think. "It was white under the brown color, but now it looks gray. And my skin seems smoother and healthier. Can it be true? Is it possible?" He went to his father. "I'm grown up," he announced determinedly. "I want to wear long pants." His father thought about it. "Well," he said finally, "I don't know. 14 is the usual age for putting on long pants. You're only 12. But you'll have to admit, protested Benjamin, that I'm big for my age. Oh. I'm not sure about that, said Mr. Button. I was as big as you when I was 12. This was not true. It was all part of Roger Batton's silent agreement with himself to believe in his son's normality. Finally, Benjamin's parents agreed to his request. Benjamin was to continue to dye his hair. He was to make a better attempt to play with boys of his own age. He was not to wear his spectacles or carry a cane in the street. In return for these concessions he was allowed his first suit of long trousers.